Alright guys, so we're going to do this a little different. Obviously me and Adam aren't both on camera all that often. Usually one of us is behind it, but we wanted to take a minute, especially after going to this Lodi show, just because this has definitely turned out a lot different than he and I probably could have ever expected. We're only a month and a half into doing this. We were going to do this at 10,000 views, but we're already up to almost 12,000 views. In a very short amount of time. We're over 1,000-minute average a day, which to some of these big guys might not be a big deal, but for somebody that's just getting started, that's pretty cool. So we just want to take a minute to say thanks. Having everybody come up and shake our hand at the Derby and tell us that they love what we're doing, and just two guys doing dumb stuff out in the garage and everybody wants to watch it. I mean, I know you all really just want to see Adam, but we want to take a minute, say thank you. We appreciate you guys tagging along, and there's a ton more to come.
This one's
so,
for you.
To you guys. Now back to the work. All right, Adam. It looks like we had a oops. Why
Guys, I'm heading up.
Why is the motor all tore up? Well, it's getting put back together now.
The motor's not tore apart at all. What are you talking about?
What's going on in here?
The distributor's missing. Someone stole the distributor.
What really happened here, Adam?
We fired this motor up a bunch of times. It sounds really good. I spent a lot of time adjusting all the valves, getting them just right. Spent a ton of time in the carburetor. Edelbrock actually was nice enough to tune this thing just for Derby for us. You've heard it in several of the videos before. This thing sounded so good. We decided to run this car just a little bit earlier than you guys were expecting. So we thought, let's go ahead for the final tuning. Let's get a radiator in it. Let's get our new little contraption that we figured out here, which is our inline filler necks and all of this stuff. Let's start pumping some water through this engine so that we can actually make sure we're getting good oil pressure, leave it running long enough, make sure it's coming up to temperature, make sure you could drive this thing to work tomorrow if you wanted to. However, when we started putting water in it, it started coming out of the heads as fast as we could put it in the radiator. So, not sure quite what happened. It's one of those things whenever you build a brand new motor. I mean, this thing is brand new from the block up, and every little nut and bolt I put in there with my hands, and Cody helped as well. And I think with starting it a few times, doing things like that, running it dry just a little bit, we vibrated a few of the bolts loose. When we went back and started taking things apart, a couple of them came out with our fingers. They weren't tight at all. So there's probably a few steps that I missed whenever I was building it. However, it sounded so good and everything was working right that we didn't think anything about it until we went to put the water in it. So in a matter of a few hours, Cody completely tore this motor back apart while it was in here. I ran over and rebuilt the whole thing while he ran to grab a couple more parts, and knock on wood, somewhere in the garage, it's holding water right now, so it's not leaking anywhere. We put a lot of Forma gasket and new gaskets, all kinds of things like that to make sure. The biggest thing we were thankful for is when we pulled the heads, every piston was just absolutely full of antifreeze, and luckily it was leaking so bad we never started the motor. So technically it hasn't had any water ran through it yet. We're hoping that everything is still fine. We're going to do a quick oil change on it. We like to do an oil change on these after every Derby if we can. We were just talking about it earlier. The oil should never be dirty. It should always come out good enough to put in your daily driver and take it to work. So hopefully we didn't mess anything up, but valuable lesson, always go through and retorque all of your bolts. Double check all of your gaskets. There's ways where you can test the water leakage before you get it completely assembled. Do things like that. When the intake is still off and you don't have any push rods or anything in there, pour a little bit in the heads once they're all sealed and everything's done so that you can see what's going on. Maybe we'll do a video update on how to do that, but a little catastrophic failure before we ever even got to go anywhere. So.
Alright, so as you can see, not a whole lot left. We got to put the headers back on, get the distributor back, but really there's not a whole lot of work left. You know, we got a bunch of like the temp sensor and stuff were all unhooked, and obviously the wiring's all undone, but nothing overly serious. So we'll get that all put back together here. We are going to let everything sit overnight before we try to fire it back up and make sure everything's good to go. If we look over here, aside from some parts laying on the floor, there's no car. Why isn't there a car over here? We said that we were going to be bringing that box Ford into the garage and starting to strip that down for the last man standing race. Well, as Adam had mentioned, we have decided that this car, which is designed, the goal in building this car is that it is meant to run at the 4-man team Demolition Derby, semi-stock rules, in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And that is still its plan. However, we decided, since this is a freshly rebuilt motor that Adam has put together here, we're going to take this and also have it be one of our Ram cars for the Last Man Standing race. Now, obviously, there's a little bit of risk that something could get broke.
There's a whole lot of risk.
There's a lot of risk. But the biggest thing is these are 3 or 5 lap races. They're relatively short. The run time isn't all that much. And typically,
look at what I did last year that was actually so slippery in a big car, I really only made like 1 lap because I stopped and started blocking people as they come back around. So might take a few hits in it, but we won't destroy it. Hopefully.
In the last 2 years of this, there's only been 1 car that couldn't drive itself back on the trailer after this event. So the hope is, obviously we understand the risk going into it, but the ideal thing would be this car should be okay, and we should get a decent shakedown for this motor just to make sure that everything is as it should be, no issues, it's happy, so that when we go to this team derby, we're as prepared as we can be. So that's going to be the new plan. Obviously, you guys are going to hear us give you plans all the time, but simple fact is they're just going to change as frequently. So, sorry we threw you a little bit of a curveball, but we're going to continue to get to work on this thing. Once again, guys, we appreciate everything very much. The idea of being to where we are now is just impressive. Thanks to all you guys that are commenting all the time. That is freaking cool. Love talking to everybody. And, guys, if you see us in the pits, if you enjoy what we're doing, stop in and say hi.
Come grab a free sticker.
Come grab a sticker. We've always got One Goose stickers. Come grab one if you want one. We definitely appreciate it. It's really cool. So we're going to finish getting this thing thrown back together. Guys, thanks a lot. And as always,
Get goosed.